And now from San Diego, California, welcome to the Gentle Jab Show. With a little gentle jab coming from the left and another gentle jab coming from the right. We'll exchange some punches, but they'll be pretty light. We'll debate politics and have a friendly fight. So let's get started.
Welcome to Gentle Jabs. On this show, Democrats and Republicans get together to discuss current events around the United States and around the world. Tonight, we'll be discussing 5 topics: Title 42, global warming, Ukraine, gender identity, and gas prices. John, you want to kick it off for us tonight?
Well, let's take a look at Title 42 first. I mean, the administration is making a huge mistake here. President Trump had the border under control. He knew what he was doing. Joe has a, border czar who's never been to the border and has no clue. Now, President Trump, I thought you did a great job controlling the border. Crossings were down to historic lows. And these guys, within a year, have turned it completely around. What do you think when you hear this baloney that they're trying to do down there?
Well, it's just what you said, it's baloney. I mean, what have they done right is the question in 15 months. But I was watching TV the other day, and when asked recently about Title 42, Biden, he commented on the CDC's mask mandate and didn't answer the question. And we're talking about the Department of Justice action on Title. Really, Joe? Is this how you can't even read the teleprompter right? It's really disgusting. Everyone, it's disgusting, and it's going to come to an end here very, very soon. That I can promise you.
Well, I can tell you this. In Sweden, they thought it would be a great idea to allow unbridled immigration, and it's turned into a disaster. The people aren't assimilating. They're committing crimes. It's destroying their culture, and it's a joke. Now, Bill Clinton, I know you're going to defend this baloney, but how do you defend this?
Well, as I said before, the only reason why Title 42 should be no longer enforced is because, according to the CDC, the spread of COVID-19 is way down and there's no longer necessary to implement.
Okay, so why are the Democrats, I've seen Valerie Jarrett and even Jen Psaki say, oh yeah, I'm going to keep wearing a mask. We recommend people keep wearing a mask. I mean, they want to let these people come in across the border, but they want Americans to go to the grocery store and still wear a mask. It's ridiculous.
Well, the local towns will not be able to handle the 15,000 illegal people crossing our border each day. There's been over 1 million arrests by our border agents. That I can tell you.
Well, they've 21 guys on the terror watch list. Now, Mitch, let's cue up clip 1. And let's see what Fox News has to say about this effect that it may have on even the midterms. Let's take a look at this clip.
Let's bring in Mark Thiessen, former George W. Bush speechwriter, a Fox News contributor. I want to just show you that there's many Democrats who have basically tried to distance themselves from the Biden administration and have said to the White House, like, we do not think this is a good idea. I think you and I agree on something, Mark. When Senator Coons, who is very close to President Biden, says this, to me, that was basically the White House saying, go out there and float this trial balloon and see how we're going to do with trying to not end Title 42. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think Senator Coons there's no one closer to him, fellow Delaware Democrat. If he's saying this, I think that there may be a sign that they're going to reverse this. This is political kryptonite for Democrats. I mean, the Political Morning Consult poll came out last week, showed 56% of Americans oppose lifting Title 42, which would make it the most unpopular decision Joe Biden has made as president. I mean, we're talking the Iraq withdrawal, I mean, the Afghan withdrawal, everything else. This would be the most unpopular decision he's made. And you've got these vulnerable Democrats like Mark Kelly in Arizona, Catherine Cortez Masto in Nevada, and also Maggie Hassan in New Hampshire, who have come out against this. Why is Maggie Hassan concerned about this? Because New Hampshire is nowhere near the border. It's because of fentanyl. Mm-hmm. It's not just a surge of illegal migrants coming over the border. It's a surge of fentanyl. Fentanyl deaths reached record levels in 2021, and they now exceed gun murders and homicides and gun shootings across the country in terms of cause of death. So this is good. The border disaster has an impact across the country, and it's going to have an impact across the country at the polls.
What needs to be emphasized is the Democrats specifically are calling for this, as you rightly point out, Chris Coons. I mean, he's a brother in arms in the state of Delaware. Beto O'Rourke in the state of Texas wants to be governor. He's against it. Henry Cuellar has been outspoken about it for some time. Senator Masto in Nevada, I think she's the first Latina the Senate has ever had, and she's against it also. With that as a backdrop, here is Kevin McCarthy with perhaps a line of campaigning for Republicans over the next 6 months before midterms. Watch.
What Americans want, need, and deserve is a clear, common-sense alternative. And that's what's happening with the House Republicans. We will secure our border to stop this immigration crisis, but more importantly, to stop the fentanyl that is coming into America. That's the difference of why the president's approval ratings are so low, and that's why America will make a new course and Republicans will take the majority.
Crime, the border, drugs. How likely is it, Mark, that when Republicans take control of the House, the Senate, and the White House someday, they will make it a policy to finish the wall?
Oh, I think it's very likely, and also restore the Remain in Mexico policy, restore the safe third country agreements that President Trump negotiated, where people have to apply for asylum. This is the problem: is that we should not be depending on a public health measure to prevent us from having an open border. Joe Biden has been protected from the consequences of his decisions at the border by Title 42, by the pandemic, because he got rid of the Remain in Mexico policy where people had to apply for asylum there. He got rid of the safe third country agreements. He stopped basically deportations. We have the lowest number of deportations in history. The only thing that has prevented an absolute deluge of people coming across this border has been Title 42. And so if he lifts that, Americans will finally, if we think the border has been a disaster for the last year, it's going to be a disaster like they've never seen. And of course, they're going to pay a political price for that.
Point being in all that, you can't trust.
Well, that's a pretty good clip there. And President Trump, I think you did exactly what most Americans want done. I can't believe that these Democrats, I don't know who's left, they're all going to leave the ship and leave Joe with Kamala sitting there. So it's pretty amazing to me that they've gotten away with this. Now, anyone have any comments on immigration before we move on to global warming?
Well, I was just going to say, I completely agree to what Lisa just said. This is going to be political kryptonite for the Democrats in November.
I would like, if I could, John, if I could just say something. I will say that there is a surge of fentanyl coming across the border. It is a very big concern of mine and to many other Democrats. I think we're up to 12 to 15 right now that are, Manchin's one of them, of course. And, we are concerned about Title 42. So it's not just the Republicans. There are many Democrats that are on board with that. We can't just allow thousands and thousands of people just to come in and just, there's no check there. I mean, I'm all for people coming here. But with lifting 42, I think it really capsizes the boat, I would say.
Yeah, I think so. So I think we're all in agreement there. So why don't you got to know somebody that can get a hold of Joe, right? I mean, you're still good friends with Barry Obama, or, maybe who can you get a hold of?
Well, there's several people I can talk to. I don't want to say it publicly who my contacts are, but we'll get this done.
I do agree with you, Bill. When it comes to, and they said it perfectly, when it comes to adding up all of the deaths because of fentanyl and what a serious problem, it's something that they can't ignore. When it's starting, as much as it grew in 2021, they cannot ignore what a threat it is with just having an open border. So, John, do you want to get on with our second topic?
Yeah, let's move on to global warming. I mean, I think what they ought to do is try to get as many people involved and plant a bunch of trees and do what we can. I'm not in favor of some new big global bureaucracy in Brussels or Antwerp, telling us what to do and coming up with some taxes. I mean, what I find really interesting about Democrats is the biggest hypocrites on all this stuff is Democrats, right? I mean, they fly around, John Kerry flies around on private jets. His carbon footprint is absolutely ridiculous. And I can't believe that they try to get away with this. Guys like Michael Moore and Prince Harry and AOC and who's that? Leonardo DiCaprio. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Can I ask you something, John? Do you think that global warming is not real?
Well, I think that climate change is real. And I think that you have to do what you have to do to square it away. But I've got a low carbon footprint. I would love for our government to come up with simple, common sense approaches. I mean, I saw an article that if a billion trees were planted in the next 5 years, that would be the biggest thing that could be done to help this global warming. But having these liberal hypocrites, John Kerry and these clowns behind me, I mean, it's just amazing. I saw an article where the FP&L has a wind farm out in the Midwest, and they got a fine of $8 million because they were killing eagles. So there's no just simple solution. Now, Mitch, what is your thought on this?
Well, I had a show earlier today where I interviewed Renee Owens, and she's been on National Geographic Channel. She's been on the Discovery Channel. She's a wildlife conservationist, and we were discussing the same issue, is global warming.
Can I ask you what kind of wildlife she's talking about?
Mainly the wildlife in San Diego.
Of course, yeah.
But she did do, she taught at different colleges. She did a course with Boston University, the Galapagos Islands. She worked primarily in South America with anacondas and rare crocodiles. But my point being that there's a study that the top 100 companies produce 75% of the emissions that are being produced. And so we can all do our part and lowering our emissions and our output. But really what it comes down to, there's this psychological aspect of, okay, let's all put solar on our houses. That's great. And I'm all behind that in producing clean energy, but we should be getting clean energy from our source to begin with. And there just has to be larger infrastructure change. I know that BP is talking about having a shift and having clean energy by 2050. But what a concern is for a lot of people is that in the next 28 years, that the damage that's done to the climate could grow to a point where we can't fix it. And if we're going to plant those trees, John, we need to get on it stat.
Yeah, we got to get on it. I mean, that's what
I'll tell you, this is much deeper than just trees. Okay. I mean, we've got long lasting effects of this global warming, atmospheric rivers, destabilizing ice shelves, is raising the water levels. That's a concern.
Well,
and that's real science.
Yeah, let's take a look at clip 2 for a slight tutorial on this. Now, Bill Clinton, are you pulling a Jeffrey tube in there? Have you got your panel? There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering if that was a blanket that was covering you up. Let's take a quick look.
I just got distracted for a second.
Yeah, let's take a look at this climate change tutorial.
As a result of the Industrial Revolution that kicked off in the mid-1700s, the Earth's surface is warming up at a never-seen-before rate. A major reason for the rise in temperatures is the increase in the concentration of greenhouse gases in the Earth's atmosphere. These cause our planet to retain heat from the sun. Greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide and methane are released into the atmosphere when fossil fuels are burned. Trees and oceans absorb carbon dioxide, but can't handle the large amounts that are now building up in the Earth's atmosphere. And because our forests are shrinking, even less carbon dioxide is absorbed. The high levels of carbon dioxide are already acidifying oceans, killing off coral reefs. It's also triggering a dangerous rise in sea levels and an increase in extreme weather events. Around the world and across Europe, innovators are now racing against the clock to invent new ways to live in our cities, use land, manufacture products, and run our businesses. New innovations are bringing down greenhouse gas emissions to confront climate change and its threat to our health and our economies, while creating new, sustainable growth and jobs. Join us at Climate Kick.
So that's a pretty simple, that's by the European Union, it's a pretty simple look at the climate change. I think if we got everyone engaged and got every school, you know, grade school kids, get them involved, plant 100 trees per class and do this. And I think we can do it. I mean, it's not going to be simple, but I'm not in favor of another global bureaucracy that's going to try to think they're going to come up with some taxation scheme. You know, whenever they have a climate change conference in Davos or, you know, Rotterdam, 157 people go to the conference and 157 private jets are on the runway. You know, so I think we need some common sense solutions, and I think we can do better. I mean, we used to talk about the pollution in Los Angeles. That's a whole bunch better than it was. So I think that with common sense and putting people and getting kids involved, we can turn this around. Now, that's not all that needs to be done, but I think that would be a great start. So let's plant 1 billion trees, and then we'll see what's going on. Now, any other comments on global warming?
Yeah, there. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mitch. Go ahead, Mitch.
Presidents first.
Okay, well, you know, I was just thinking that some of the issues that they've been oversold because they're allowed for more regulations to take place. So the people who like regulations use it as a tool, as a means to an end. As a result, we might be getting more regulations and more taxes. That really, you know, is an inroad. So in science, but to me, it's just more politics.
Well, and I was just going to say that more from the scientific view, and it was so fascinating talking with her today because of the work that she does with wildlife conservation, that with the statistics that every second the oceans are warming at the rate of as if 4 Hiroshima bombs were going off per second. And so if you take that into account, how quickly our oceans are heating up, what the domino effect that's causing certain types of bacteria and algae wouldn't grow in certain temperatures, but they're able to grow. That affects the wildlife. It affects the sea turtles who are already endangered. It creates this domino effect to the point where everything is cause and effect, and it's affecting everything worldwide. They say that global warming as a whole is like having a blanket around the earth because of our atmosphere. And they say the second blanket is our ocean heating up as well.
Yeah, so it's got to be addressed and we got to work on it, but I'm for common sense solutions. Now, these 3 guys behind me, I don't think they brought anything to the table. I mean, John Kerry is as probably clueless on this as anybody, but he parades around and he says that a person like him should not have to fly commercial planes. So let's move on to Ukraine.
Can I say something though, John?
Yeah,
Can I just make a quick comment? I just want to talk to the American people who are watching this show, Gentle Jabs. If you'd like to see more of the Gentle Jabs show, believe me, please hit the like and sub button. We'd much appreciate it.
Yeah, that's a great thing. We've got a Gentle Jabs channel on YouTube. We're putting up our shows there. If anyone that's watching the show likes it, subscribe, repost it on Getter or Twitter or whatever you're doing, and let's keep this thing going. Okay, let's move on to Ukraine. I don't have any clips on Ukraine tonight, but everything I hear, nothing is good. I don't know why they can't come to some agreement and try to settle this thing, because the human rights of violations and war crimes that's going on is really getting a little bit out of control. Every day I see more and more, and the Ukrainians are doing the best they can, but and I think we're supplying them with arms, but I don't know that it's going to be enough. They've got to come to some peaceful solution, or at least some agreement. Now, what do you think, President Clinton?
Well, I think that Russia is completely out of control. And I feel that we need to bankrupt our own country so that Ukraine wins. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds like a really good solution.
You've heard of MIC, right?
No, what's that?
That's the military industrial complex. That's who's laughing all the way to the bank.
Yeah, that's what Dwight Eisenhower warned us about in his farewell address back in 1956. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I don't know why they can't reach an agreement where Ukraine will not become a part of NATO and Russia will agree that we'll let them be a sovereign state. I mean, culturally, they have a lot in common. So why can't that exist that way? I don't quite understand why all these people that are running around can't sit down and do a diplomatic solution.
Well, and at the same time, you have President Putin and putting in these laws in place that anyone that talks anything about war is thrown into prison, and he's putting all of his people in this state of fear to where they can't watch the TVs, they can't get the news, they're not allowed to have any. I mean, talk about fake news. They're not even allowed to get any information. They're going in there completely blindsided, not knowing what's happening in Ukraine. I think that President Putin's done a really good job of creating disillusion in his own country. And it's really sad to see the fact that they really don't know what's actually happening, what their leaders actually leading them into. It's really disgraceful.
Well, it seems like that anybody that, all the journalists that could flee Russia fled Russia, and the ones that don't go along with the party line get 15 years in a slammer. So that's not a good thing. So I think we've got to work. I don't know where the diplomats are. We got that United Nations sitting there. Donald, why don't you? That would be a great thing to set up 2024. What do you think about getting the UN and the people that you used to know? I mean, our intelligence apparatus has not impressed me over the last couple of years. This guy Clapper and Brennan that signed that letter that said that Hunter's laptop was Russian disinformation. I think you're probably the guy that could get in there and try to bring a peace accord. That would set up 2024 beautifully.
Well, thank you, John. You know, the truth is, this is a war that should never have happened. The only winners are the people, the military, like Bill said, I'll agree with him on that, the military-industrial complex. We are spending too much of our taxpayer money. Too much is going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, any other comments on Ukraine before we move on to gender identity?
I would just say that depends on what is.
Yeah, you had a real problem with that back in your day.
Yeah, I sure did. I had more than that.
I mean, that was a really interesting time for you, I can imagine. So
well, some of the best of times and some of the worst of times.
Yeah, so I mean, some of those people, Susan McDougal, Jim Gay Tucker, they all went to jail. I mean, how come you and your wife never got even indicted? What was that all about?
Now, come on, John, you're supposed to be the friendly face.
Okay, we'll let that slide. But, you know, I mean,
I appreciate that, John.
Everyone gives Trump a hard time about his real estate investments. Whitewater didn't turn out too good for you and Hillary. So it's pretty amazing. So let's move on to gender identity. I mean, this is getting really to be an interesting topic here. I mean, we've got Disney World, you know, claiming, and I saw clips where their executives were belittled by their employees and said, we're going to overturn this bill in Florida. And the bill in Florida basically says, we don't want people indoctrinating third graders down to kindergartners about this baloney. So let's take a look at clip number 3. This is how the Canadian woke people are wanting people to learn about this gender identity as young children. Let's take a look at this. I mean, that's the kind of garbage they want to start teaching kids. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, let's take a look at CNN Plus. Nobody's watching CNN when it's free. When they charge people, they shut it down within a month. So all this wokeism is going to come back and bite the Democrats big time. I mean, when I was a kid, we never got into that. You wanted to know what kind of sports you wanted to play. I never knew this was an issue when I was a kid. If you were a boy, you're a boy. And if you were a girl, you're a girl. And you played on this team or that team. You went to that bathroom or that bathroom. And it's just ridiculous how these liberals are trying to push this agenda on people. Now, if one of the presidents want to step in, I would appreciate it.
You know, all I know is I don't want our children involved in listening to this type of interpretation. You know, let the parents teach them and the kids make their own decisions later in life. Children do not need this type of education when they're very, very young and impressionable. They just don't need, you know, the people that do need it, I think there is help.
Yeah, they should be learning this, like this little girl. They should be learning reading, writing, and arithmetic, colors, sounds, learning how to play musical instruments, getting involved in sports. after school activities. This leftist garbage is just ridiculous. And Disney's going to pay a big price. I mean, this is going to cost them dearly. And I think that, they're probably the most woke corporation in America right now. So anyone else have a comment on this?
I think that we're being a little insensitive here.
Really?
Because there's non-binary, and that's one that rejects the traditional gender as only a male or female. And so we have to consider how these people feel, even though on the outside they may be male or female. On the inside, that's not who they are. And I respect that.
Well, let's take a look. We talked about the animal kingdom. Does the animal kingdom have any confusion on this? I mean, a bull is a bull and a cow is a cow. You get milk from a cow. You get eggs from a hen. You don't get eggs from a rooster. I mean, this is just the last 15, 20 years garbage. Are you guys going to run on this in 2022?
Well, I just think I think that we need to have equity, and I think we need to have people that are more sensitive to some people. It may not be how you feel, John. It may not be how I feel. God knows I've been in places you wouldn't want to go.
I can imagine.
But I'll tell you something. We have to be more sensitive to other people who do not think the same way that we do. And that's how I got along in Congress in the early 90s when I was outmanned. I had to move more to the center. You have to listen to people. You have to listen. Some people are very sensitive, and it means a great deal to them.
Yeah, but we don't have to change our value system and our fabric of our country.
And you guys wake me up when this is over.
Yeah, this is ridiculous. This whole gender identity thing is going to cost the Democrats big time. Now let's move on to gas prices.
I just wanted to say, since we were talking about Disney, I'm not sure if you guys heard, but Disney has Pixar, and in their new Buzz Lightyear film, they have a same-sex kiss in their new Disney film. And so it's one thing to have us be having grown adults come out and say, hey, this is the way I feel about myself. It's another thing to take kids who are 4 and 5 years old and to confuse them and to tell them that, hey, it really starts to screw with these little kids' heads when they're too young, that they shouldn't be learning. They shouldn't be teaching sex ed to 5-year-olds.
By the way, Mitch, I just wanted to add, Mitch, what you just said is very, very important. That's the point that we're all trying to make here. The bill doesn't seem to get. It's very important what you just said, because, these people, they don't realize what they're doing. They don't realize what they're doing. And they know what they're doing in Florida. They know what's going on. And it's just, this Netflix, they're hurting badly. They're hurting very badly. Why? Yeah. Because they got this one documentary thing that came out the other day. I couldn't believe it. It's called He's Having a Baby. I'm not even going to watch it, but it's called He's Having a Baby. And their stock, everything is dropping like a lead balloon, just like the Democrats dropping.
Let me ask President Clinton a question. I haven't heard a Democrat yet answer this question.
Yeah, I can.
The Health and Human Services Secretary dodged the question when asked, can a man have a baby?
Well, I can answer that. Of course he can. Now, you're talking about, can he have a baby? Yes, sure. I believe he can take care of a baby. He can have a baby.
Wait. Take care of is a different thing. Can a man produce a baby from his loins?
I'll tell you, there's been times where my indigestion's so bad I thought I was having a baby.
Yeah, I can imagine. Okay, so we kicked that around enough. Let's go to gas prices before we close the show tonight. Mitch, we've got clip 4 here. I mean, this is going to start to get pretty ugly when this is the kind of stuff that's going on. The truckers don't like this.
Glendale area, southbound 5 freeway. We got some big rig truckers taking over the 5 freeway. They're basically out here protesting higher fuel prices. We're all feeling that pinch, but these guys make their living, and this is really cutting into their bottom line. Now, they are cutting into some of these commuters' bottom line as well. Only 2 lanes are open right now. Thank goodness for that. They probably could shut down the whole 5 freeway. This is actually happening right there at Colorado. Look at the backup. They've basically just showed up, the backup all the way out into the Burbank area. Again, don't know how long they're going to be here. I'm sure California Highway Patrol might be aware of the situation now. They'll probably come over and ask these truckers to move along. If not, this could go on for quite some time. Again, this is a small group of big rig truckers that are basically protesting the higher fuel prices. I'm Stu up in Skyfox. Back to you guys in the studio.
Well, that's kind of what's going on, and I haven't seen the prices come down here. I'm really embarrassed by what Joe's done. I mean, Donald Trump had our country energy independent. I mean, we were on the right track. Prices were down under $2 most parts of the country. I'm seeing $6.50 plus here in California. I mean, it's getting pretty ridiculous. And you've got this energy secretary who has no idea. You've got Jen Psaki, you know, backing up Joe on every mistake that he makes. So I think that this is going to continue. This is not transitory. And this administration is completely clueless. Now, President Trump, what would be how quickly could you move us back to energy independence?
Very quickly, with the stroke of a pen. And I can tell you, you know, the first week that Sleepy Joe was in there, he cut it out. He shut down the Keystone Pipeline. You know, the amount of the gas prices, not because of Russia. We had the Keystone Pipeline going, making us energy independent. I think the government is trying to force the American people to go to the Green New Deal. That's just my opinion.
Yep. No, I agree with you 100%. Now, Mitch, you have any comments on it? What's going on in Utah?
Yeah, it's gone over 450 here in Utah. We're not hurting as bad as you are in California. I do have a close friend of mine that just took a road trip to California, and they had just purchased a new car, and they were saying, wow, I really thinking about moving back to California. I should have thought about buying a more fuel efficient car because of the gas prices. Just crossing the border is such a $2 difference per gallon is insane. And kind of like what we talked about on last week's show or earlier this week, that once you start affecting the infrastructure with the truckers, and the trucking industry going up, then the cost of supply chain goes up for all the rest of our goods. And then there's that domino effect of the cost of all of our groceries are going to skyrocket and continue to grow and more. It's something that could easily been fixed if they wouldn't have shut down the pipeline day one when he got into office.
Absolutely. Now, President Clinton, did you want to come in on this?
Well, I think, you know, looking at the gas prices, in reality, it's because of the pandemic. You know, we just completely shut down the economy. Prices collapsed. You know, the demand, it went down. So when we came out of the COVID-19, Russia attacked Ukraine. So less Russian oil is going out, less oil in the global bathtub. So
Wait a minute, hold on. Only 3% of the oil comes out of Russia.
The truth is, without the Russian oil, other countries, they have less oil and all their other prices go up because they're in demand from those other countries.
Well, I think that it's going to be a really tough time. If you guys are going to run on this stuff and keep blaming Trump or Putin or somebody else for the self-inflicted problems that you guys have created.
Is it ever going to end, John, the Russia thing? Is it ever going to end when they...
Oh, I don't know. When is it going to
They attack me, my family. I mean, it's none of it's proven to be true. None of it.
Yeah. Now, this was a good lively show. Mitch, do you have a comment?
Yeah, sorry. I just had a question for Bill Clinton. If we have such an issue with oil, why don't we tap into the resources that we already have? Why don't we get into the oil that we have in Alaska? Why don't we reopen the pipelines that we have resources in this country? Why are we continuing to outsource and make the American people suffer when we have those resources? We just don't tap into them.
Well, that's a very good question. I'm glad you asked. Number one, it takes time to get that oil out and go through refineries. Number two, the money that we're spending should go to Ukraine to help them lose the war with Russia. So, you know, I don't want to be sarcastic with you, Mitch, but things take time to do that. But what I am concerned about, though, since we're on this topic, is what President Biden did last week of going in our reserves, our emergency oil reserves, and gave millions and millions of barrels to Europe. Now that's ours. That's our oil. It's there for emergency. I don't consider that to be an emergency because what happens if we need it? then what are we going to do?
Yeah, it's a mess, and the Democrats are going to really pay a price in November, excuse me. Now, any closing comments from any of our guests tonight? I like this show, a lot of lively discussion. We had some good clips, and let's get closing comments from either of the presidents.
Well, I'm just looking forward to November. I can't wait. You know, this is the first time I wish we didn't have a summer, because I think things are going to be radically changed. And I think you're going to like it. Everybody's going to like the big blue wave. It's not coming. It's not coming, but the red tide is. So
Yeah.
I appreciate everybody listening. And again, hit the like and sub. Gentle Jabs. We'd love to talk to you.
Yep, if you want, subscribe to our channel. We'll put this show up in the next a bit of time, and everyone have a good evening. Anything from you, Mitch? Any closing comment?
No, I think this was a really great show. I think we covered some important topics, and everyone just go on YouTube, type in Gentle Jabs, and you'll see our shows. We hope that you all have a great week. Don't forget to like and subscribe and put your comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts, and we'll see you again next week.